I opened my eyes in a hospital room, gazing at the ceiling, unsure if it was dawn or dusk. My right hand reached down and found only emptiness where my left leg should have been. A surge of terror overwhelmed me. My chest constricted and I struggled to catch my breath. My sister Tara was beside me, her eyes swollen and red, gripping my hand tightly. "Micah," she murmured, "you made it. That's what counts." I wanted to believe her, to feel thankful. But my mind was consumed by the race I'd been preparing for, the life I'd been constructing, and the woman I was about to marry. That evening, Collie entered the room. My fiancée, the woman I'd loved since I was 20, stood at the foot of the bed, her arms crossed, her lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't embrace me or even touch me. She looked away, then spoke 5 words that would haunt me forever. I didn't agree to this. I waited for her to laugh, cry, or admit she was terrified. But she didn't. She simply turned and left the room as if I were a stranger she'd never known. She abandoned me. The day after I lost my leg, the woman I was going to marry walked away. In that instant, I believed everything was over. But it wasn't, because what followed would transform everything. Before my world collapsed, I had a stable life. It wasn't flawless, but it was solid, the kind of existence that made sense. At 31, I lived in a quiet neighborhood in St. Charles, Missouri, in a modest brick house with a white porch swing my mother had given me when I moved out. I had just proposed to my longtime girlfriend, Collie Dane, after 8 years together. We'd met at a charity 5K during college. She handed me a paper cup of water at the 2-mile mark, smiled and teased, "You're drenched like someone who's losing." I pursued her number more relentlessly than I chased the finish line. Collie was intelligent, polished, and effortlessly stylish, the kind of person who seemed to belong in magazines. She worked as a freelance graphic designer, always preoccupied with aesthetics, lighting, and Instagram filters. I loved her, or maybe I loved the version of her who smiled when I made pancakes on Sundays and curled up beside me during horror movies. I thought we were building a future together. I believed she was in it for the long haul. Running wasn't just a pastime for me. It was part of my identity. I had competed in track throughout high school and college. After graduating, I kept pushing myself 5Ks, half marathons, then full ones. I was training to qualify for the Boston Marathon. Every morning before work, I ran while the sky was still soft with dawn. People called me obsessed, but I just felt driven. My job wasn't glamorous. I taught physical education at a local middle school, but it paid the bills and left me time to train. Yet I had bigger ambitions. I was saving to launch a youth running program, something affordable and inclusive. A way to help kids escape tough neighborhoods and toxic cycles. I called it Stride Beyond. The domain name was already mine. The idea felt bigger than myself. My mother was my anchor, a retired elementary school teacher with a stubborn streak and the gentlest hands imaginable. She used to wake up at 5 a.m. to braid my sister Tara's hair before school, then slip little notes into my lunchbox. One read, "Run like you're chasing joy." I still kept it pinned to my fridge. Mom had her doubts about Collie, though she never said so outright. I caught it in her tone. "You're finally settling down, baby," she said the day after I proposed. "Are you sure she's the one?" I laughed it off. "Mom, I've run hundreds of miles." I'd still chase her barefoot. Tara, my younger sister by 4 years, was a nurse tough in ways I never was, calm in crises and razor-sharp in arguments. She and Collie got along on the surface, but there was always an unspoken distance between them. Tara called it mutual toleration. I tried not to dwell on it. Then there was Grandpa Silas, my father's father, a retired Marine confined to a wheelchair after a stroke, but still as sharp as a rusted nail. He lived across town in a small assisted living facility, and I visited him every Saturday without fail. We talked about football, boxing, and the old days when men weren't afraid to bleed. He liked Collie well enough, but I knew he didn't trust anyone who flinched at hardship. Once, while watching a documentary about wounded veterans, he turned to me and said, "Anyone can love you when you're whole. But life doesn't keep you whole. Life breaks you. Find someone who holds the pieces, not runs from them." I told him I already had thought my days were full but not chaotic. I woke at 5 a.m., laced up my shoes, and ran 6 miles before sunrise. Afterward, I'd shower, blend a protein shake, and kiss Collie goodbye as she sat on the couch with her laptop. I taught gym classes until late afternoon, then met with a local mentor about launching my youth running foundation. Collie cooked dinner maybe twice a week. The rest of the time, we ordered in or went to Miller's Cafe, where the waitress knew our names and our favorite booth. We weren't flashy or perfect, but I thought we were real. I believed the proposal had sealed that truth. I knelt on the track where we first met, pulled out the ring and said, "Let's keep running together." She cried, said yes, called her mother, and posted it to Instagram before I even stood up. I didn't see any cracks in our relationship. Maybe I ignored them. Maybe I thought love was supposed to be tested later, after marriage, after kids. Maybe I believed that showing up every day was enough. I remember the week before the accident, lying in bed with her. She rested her head on my chest, her hand in my hair. "Do you think we'll change?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "We'll grow, but the roots stay the same." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I remember that now more clearly than anything else. That version of my life, the one filled with morning runs, warm meals, and wedding plans, ended on a Thursday afternoon under a clear sky when a driver ran a red light and struck me at 60 miles per hour. They said I was lucky to survive, but the truth was I didn't walk away from that crash. A part of me died that day, and the part that woke up would have to figure out how to keep going without the woman I loved and without the leg that had carried me through everything. The impact hit like an explosion. I never saw it coming. One moment, I was jogging across the crosswalk after a 10-mile training run, something I'd done countless times before. The next, I was airborne. I remember a blinding flash of white, the crunch of metal, and the sound of my body slamming into the pavement like a discarded doll. I woke up in a hospital bed, everything numb. Harsh light poured in through a high window, and machines beeped rhythmically. I tried to sit up, but pain locked me in place. My mouth was parched and my head throbbed. Then I saw Tara. She held my hand, her eyes red-rimmed, her face pale. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "Micah, they had to amputate. They couldn't save. Your leg, I'm so sorry." I looked down and saw the blanket lying flat where my left leg should have been. It felt surreal, like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. My heart pounded in my chest. I tried to breathe, but my body no longer felt like my own. The room began to spin. In the days that followed, grief settled over me like a heavy blanket. I stared at the wall for hours. Every movement was agony. Every breath reminded me of what I'd lost and could never reclaim. I kept asking the same question: why me? I had trained my entire life. I treated my body like a temple. I was healthy, careful, and did everything right. Yet it all came crashing down. I remember the moment I finally asked for a mirror. I thought if I could just see it, I could begin to accept it. The nurse wheeled one over. I looked at my body, my leg ending in a thick bandaged stump, the skin stitched tightly, raw and inflamed. I didn't cry or scream. I just stared at it, as if it belonged to someone else. That's when Collie arrived. She walked into the hospital room 2 days after the surgery, her arms crossed, her hair perfectly styled, as if she just stepped out of a photo shoot. I remember thinking how flawless she still looked and how shattered I felt in comparison. She stood at the edge of my bed, silent. I waited for her to come closer, to hold me, to say we'd get through it together, but she didn't move. I spoke. "With the doctors," she said. "They said you'll need months of rehab, maybe a year." I nodded slowly, still numb. "Yeah, it's going to be a long road." She looked down, avoiding my eyes. I didn't sign up for this. At first, I didn't understand. I asked what she meant. Her voice trembled slightly. "I'm not trying to be cruel. I can't be part of this. I don't think I'm strong enough to be who you need now." I stared at her, trying to make sense of her words. This was the woman who had agreed to marry me 3 weeks earlier, the woman I thought would stand by me no matter what. "You're leaving?" I asked. "I don't know how to do this," she said. "I'm sorry." She turned and walked out of the room. Without a kiss, a promise, or even a backward glance, just the sound of her heels echoing down the hall. That noise shattered something inside me. Tara came in 10 minutes later and found me staring at the ceiling. She took one look at my face. "And understood. She left?" she asked. I nodded. Tara clenched her jaw, sat down hard in the chair, and simply held my hand without speaking. That was her way. She never filled silence with empty words. She just stayed when others fled. The next few weeks blurred into a haze of painkillers, physical therapy, and paperwork. I had to relearn how to move. Getting from the bed to the bathroom was a full workout. I had to relearn how to shower, dress, and accept help. Everything that used to be instinctive became a test of will. The nurses were kind, but I felt stripped of my dignity. Once a man who could run 10 miles before breakfast, now I needed assistance just to get out of bed. Every night, I stared at the empty space where my leg should have been. I couldn't stop replaying Callie's words. I didn't sign up for this. They echoed in my mind like a cruel refrain. I had flashbacks of our late-night conversations, the plans we'd made, the way she used to squeeze my hand 3 times to say, "I love you," without speaking. Now, it all felt hollow. I had been abandoned at my lowest point, and there was no way to soften that truth. It wasn't that she couldn't handle the injury. It was that she chose not to try. That realization hurt more than the amputation. The worst part wasn't losing my leg. It was realizing that love, the kind I believed was unbreakable, could disappear the second things got hard. Now I had to face recovery not just as an amputee, but as a man utterly alone. I spent the next 2 weeks in a fog of pain and silence. There were moments when I forgot I had only one leg. I'd reach 2, stretch, instinctively swing both feet off the bed, and be hit with a wave of agony that forced reality back into focus. Every time I looked down, it felt like grieving all over again. I didn't talk much. The nurses tried. Tara stayed as long as her shifts allowed. My mother visited every day, always bringing something: socks, a sandwich, pictures from home, but I was closed off. Not angry, just empty. One day, I overheard a nurse whispering outside the door, "He's not engaging, not even with family." That word stuck with me, not engaging. As if I had the option to skip this part. As if there was a switch I could flip. What they didn't understand was that I wasn't choosing to be distant. I was stuck. I had lost not just a leg, but the life I had trained for, the future I had planned, and the person I trusted most. Then Grandpa Silas arrived. He rolled into the room in his wheelchair as if he owned the place. He wasn't one for hugs, but he squeezed my shoulder tightly before backing into the corner, parking as if settling in for a fight. He didn't start with sympathy. He never did. "You know what I told myself after I got hit with shrapnel in '67? He said. "I told myself, well, this leg's done. I guess I'll walk with the other." Then I spent the next 3 years proving I wasn't finished. I didn't respond. He stared at me until I met his eyes. "She left," he said. I nodded. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Good. She showed you early. A woman who walks out when you're broken would have poisoned you when you were whole." I felt my throat tighten, but I didn't speak. You still have one leg, two lungs, a working brain, and a damn heartbeat. What you don't have is an excuse. He left without another word, but something about the way he said it, the weight, the certainty dug into me deeper than any pep talk could. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat up in bed and stared at the wall. My mind kept replaying the last time I ran, the wind in my ears, the rhythm of my feet on the pavement, how alive I felt. I missed that sensation more than anything. It hit me then. I wasn't mourning my leg. I was mourning movement, momentum, and purpose. I reached for my phone, opened the browser, and typed amputee runners. Within seconds, I found videos of athletes with blades fast, powerful, relentless. They looked different, but they ran like fire. One clip showed a man crossing the finish line with tears in his eyes and the blade kicking up dust behind him. That was the moment something inside me cracked open. I didn't want pity. I didn't want people to hold doors open with sad smiles or tell me I was brave just for standing. I wanted to run again. I wanted to sweat, to fail, to push, to bleed. If I had to. But most of all, I wanted to fight for something. I clicked through pages of rehab centers and prosthetic clinics until I found one specializing in high-performance athletic prosthetics. It wasn't close, and it wasn't cheap, but I didn't care. The next morning, I told Tara, "I want a blade. I want to run again." She stared at me, tears welling. "Okay," she said. "Let's make a plan." I started small, sitting up on my own, learning to balance with crutches, building core strength. The first time I stood on my right leg and tried to pivot, I fell hard. I bruised my ribs and bloodied my elbow. A nurse tried to help me up. I waved her off. "Again," I said. 3 weeks later, I took my first steps on a temporary prosthetic. It was clunky, stiff, and made everything ache. But I moved. I moved. And no one could take that from me. At night, I wrote in a notebook goals, training plans, names for my foundation. Stride Beyond stared back at me from the page like a challenge. I called a local nonprofit coordinator from my hospital bed and asked how to register as a 501(c)(3). He sounded surprised. "Usually people wait until they're better," he said. I smiled without meaning to. "This is how I get better." I started documenting my journey, photos, notes, short videos of progress. I wasn't trying to go viral. I just wanted to remember how far I'd come when I started to forget again. People began reaching out, parents of kids with amputations, veterans, a former classmate who had lost his hand in a construction accident. They asked questions, shared their stories. Some just said, "Thank you." That was the first time I felt like I was building something again. I hadn't just lost my leg. I had lost direction. And now I was choosing it back. The world hadn't saved me. No one handed me strength. But I had found a way to stand anyway. And I was just getting started. 2 years after the accident, I stood at the starting line of the New York City Marathon. The crowd buzzed with energy. Thousands of runners surrounded me, stretching, pacing, praying, laughing, trying to fight the nerves. I bounced lightly on my right leg and adjusted my carbon fiber running blade. The sky above the Verrazano Bridge was a crisp blue, the kind that made everything feel possible. I had trained for this moment every day for over a year. I had fallen, cried, and torn open healing skin. I had relearned how to land, stride, and balance, but I made it. The blade no longer felt foreign. It felt like part of me. My mother stood with Tara on the sidelines, both holding signs that read, "Run like you never stopped." Grandpa Silas couldn't make the trip, but he sent me a voice message that morning. "You're not just proving something. To the world, Micah. You're proving it to yourself. That's what counts. The gun fired. I ran. Each mile was a test. I could feel the sweat building behind my neck, the pull of muscles across my back, the impact through my right leg, and the spring-loaded rhythm of my blade on the left. People cheered from every corner. Kids held out high fives. Strangers shouted my name from the bib on my chest. At mile 13, something shifted. It wasn't just about the finish line anymore. It was about every moment that had led to this every. Early morning Tara helped me out of bed. Every step I took down the rehab hall. Every child I spoke to through Stride Beyond, showing them they weren't broken, only redesigned. I crossed the finish line just under 3 hours and 30 minutes. I was in the top 5 among amputee runners. They handed me a medal. I didn't cry. I just stood still, breathing hard, my heart pounding, soaking in what it meant to be there, not just as a survivor, but as a man who had built something stronger. From the ruins. Later that night, back at the hotel, Tara and I ordered burgers and milkshakes, the kind of post-race meal that always tastes better than it should. We sat on the floor, shoes off, the medal still around my neck. We laughed about how a dog had tried to chase me during mile 5. Then my phone buzzed. At first, I ignored it. Then I glanced at the screen. Friend request, Collie Dane. I froze. Tara noticed. No way, she said. I stared at the profile photo collie standing in front of a lake, smiling. There was no caption, no message, just the request. It hit me in a strange, quiet way, not like a punch, but like an echo. I hadn't thought about her in months. Not really. Not in any meaningful way. But there she was, watching from the outside. I clicked on her profile. There were photos, a few new ones, not many. No mention of a boyfriend. Nothing to explain. Why she reached out. Then I noticed the timing. She had sent the request an hour after I crossed the finish line, just after a local news station posted a clip of me sprinting to the end, arms raised, the camera tight on my blade. She had seen it. She had watched me run again. Maybe she expected a polite reply, a message of peace, maybe even a door left open. But the truth was, I didn't owe her that. Not anymore. I clicked the message button. I typed, "You said you didn't. Sign up, so don't." Then I hit send. Then I deleted the request. Then I turned off my phone. Tara leaned her head back against the wall. Damn, that's cold. I shook my head. No, it's honest. I didn't spend the last 2 years rebuilding myself to become someone for her. I did it to become someone for me, for the kids in my program, for the people who were told they'd never run again, never dance again, never stand tall again. I did it because I wasn't finished. The next day, I went back to the park near the hotel and met a group of kids from Stride Beyond who had come with their parents to see the medal. Some wore prosthetics. Some were in wheelchairs. All of them were beaming. One boy, maybe 9 years old, tugged at my shirt and asked, "Do you ever get scared people won't like you because of your leg?" I knelt down and said, "Sometimes, but I've learned the right people don't care how many legs you have. They care how far you're willing to go." He nodded as if he already understood what that meant. I stood back up, took a deep breath, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not because I won. Not because I proved anyone wrong, but because I had made something out of my pain that meant something to someone else. I wasn't defined by what I lost. I was defined by what I built in its place. A few months after the marathon, I stood in a high school auditorium in Kansas City, holding a microphone in one hand and a running blade in the other. The room was packed with students, parents, coaches, and a few kids in the front row wearing prosthetics of their own. Behind me, a screen showed a clip of the New York City finish line, my chest rising and falling, arms wide, sweat pouring. The blade flexing hard into the final stride. I looked at the crowd. Everyone has something they didn't ask for, I said. A loss, a pain, a moment that broke them. For me, it was the accident. For you, it might be something else. But the truth is this: what you do next matters more than what happened. A boy in the second row raised his hand. He was maybe 12, missing his right arm below the elbow. Did it ever feel like you weren't worth loving anymore? He asked. The question hit me like a punch to the ribs. I took a breath, stepped forward, and answered honestly. Yes, after I lost my leg, my fiancée left. She said she didn't sign up for the version of me that needed help, the version that looked different, and for a while I believed her. I thought I was damaged. I thought no one would ever look at me and see anything but what was missing. I raised the blade into the air, but I was wrong. Because this doesn't make me less, it makes me more. The auditorium went quiet. Then someone clapped, then other. Then the whole room was on their feet. After the talk, parents came up to shake my hand. Kids asked for photos. One girl with 2 prosthetic legs hugged me so tightly my ribs cracked. I didn't flinch. That night, I sat in my hotel room and read through emails from students who had heard me speak. Some had lost limbs. Others had faced trauma that left. No physical scars, abuse, bullying, depression. They told me I gave them hope. Hope. That word used to feel like a wish. Now it felt like a responsibility. Stride Beyond was growing. We had partnerships with schools, grants from local organizations, and volunteers showing up every weekend to train kids. We weren't just teaching them to run. We were teaching them how to fight through pain, how to hold on to their identity. When the world tries to write them off, how to look in the mirror and not flinch. Sometimes I think about the life I lost, the races I didn't get to run, the wedding that never happened. But then I think about the kids who now believe they have a future because they saw someone like them refuse to quit. And I realized I didn't lose my purpose. I just had to meet it the hard way. One afternoon, I visited my mother. She made grilled cheese and tomato soup, the kind she used to make when I was sick in elementary school. She sat across from me, in her kitchen, smiling gently as I told her about the school programs and the kids who had just joined the foundation. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're doing exactly what you were meant to do," she said. I nodded. I think I had to lose everything first to figure out what actually mattered. She didn't correct me. She just held my hand a little tighter. Later that evening, I went to see Grandpa Silas. He wasn't talking as much these days, but his eyes were still sharp. I told him about the marathon, about Callie's friend request, and how I replied and walked away without hesitation. He gave a slow, satisfied nod. "That's the kind of man I raised," he said. Before I left, I stood beside his wheelchair and said something I had never told him. "Back in the hospital, when you said I had no excuse, you were right. I didn't, but I needed someone to remind me," he smiled. "The strongest forget who they are sometimes." I walked out feeling like the story had finally come full circle. These days I still run, not always in marathons. Sometimes it's just a few laps at the community track with a group of kids. Some of them wear blades, some are just chasing the wind. I run beside them and remind them of the same thing I remind myself every day. You're not broken, you're rebuilt. That difference changes everything. I'm not who I was before the accident. I'll never be that version of Micah again, but I'm stronger. I'm more patient. I'm more focused on what actually matters. Callie was right in one way. She didn't sign up for this version of my life, but I did. And I would again, because out of pain came purpose. Out of abandonment came independence. Out of one leg came the ability to carry more than I ever thought I could. And I'm still running, so if you've made it this far, thank you. Thank you for listening to my story, not just the pain, but the rebuild. If you're going through something right now, if you've lost something, someone, or even part of yourself, I want you to remember this. You are not broken. You are not less. You are being rebuilt into something stronger than before. Not everyone will stay. Not everyone will understand. But the right people will show up when the world walks out. And when they do, you'll know who you really are. If this story meant something to you, if it made you feel seen, if it gave you even a spark of hope, do me a favor. Like this video, share it with someone who might need it, comment below, and tell me where you're running to next, whether it's a real finish line or just the next step forward. And if you want more stories like this real, raw, and honest, subscribe to the channel. This is just the beginning. We're not here to be perfect. We're here to keep moving. And no matter how hard life hits, we run anyway.